Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Copenhagen in Denmark and revisit a brewery that's featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, quite a few different styles, but I think it's fair to say that this is another brewery who are best known for their different kinds of IPA. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I've had from them once before. That last example was very nice, but I've heard very good things about this new example, and I think it's fair to say that this style has undergone something of a mini renaissance in recent times. So I think it should make for a very interesting review, and this is also one of this brewery's latest releases. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to Copenhagen, as I said. We're going to go to the northwest of the city, to Gørløse, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Dry and Bitter Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Undergang Sort Jul, or Dark Christmas, I guess we could say. It comes in at 7.5% ABV, and they're describing this one as a black double IPA. Now, as the name suggests, this one is a collaboration with the Danish death metal band Undergang. I've not listened to these guys yet, so I'll need to go and check them out after I've finished filming this video. But yeah, this beer was released as a Christmas beer in December of 2021. But as I've told you in previous videos, when it comes to the black IPA, I think there are two different kinds of black IPAs. So there are the ones that are mainly barley malt, but they can sometimes have a little bit of rye in them. Those are the more kind of West Coasty type black IPAs. But in recent times, I've noticed that some examples have kind of wheat and oats in them as well. So I would consider those to be more sort of New England type barley type black IPAs. But this one contains only barley malt, so I think we can say this is like a sort of West Coast black IPA. But as I say, I've heard very good things about this one, so I'm hoping that it lives up to those expectations. Special shout out as well to Jessica of the Beer Hive in Amager in Copenhagen. She kindly kept this can aside for me, and she's basically becoming my supplier of Danish craft beers here on the channel. So whenever I go over to Copenhagen, I'm going to try from now on to go there and have a little look at what she's got, because she's got a great selection of Danish stuff as well as things from further afield. So if you find yourself in Copenhagen, get off the metro Amager and then take a little walk for about 5 minutes to the south and you'll reach the Beer Hive. Really nice little shop actually, and Jessica is pretty awesome. They're also associated with the Tap House Amager, which is a really nice little beer bar, which I do also need to go and check out. I'm maybe filming out and about video there at some point in the future. But yeah, I'll try to remember to put the link to the Beer Hive Amager Facebook page in the video description for you below. But let's crack on with the review then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Dry and Bitter Brewing Company before, and you will no doubt see me add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to very regularly because I live in southern Sweden and I've got easy access to the Danish beer market, which is great because the Danish beers are awesome. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Dry and Bitter Brewery once again. So Dry and Bitter Brewery, as I've told you previously, were founded back in 2015 by the owners of Fermentoren. This is Soren Parker Wagner and Jay Pollard, and it was basically as a continuation of the Crooked Moon brewing brand. But these guys were also involved in founding Ølkollektivet, which is a collective brewing space in Gørløse in the northwest of Copenhagen, along with a few others. So for a long time, they shared this brewery space with Gamma Brewing Company, who have now moved on as of early 2021 to their own brewery, and Amager, who are still brewing in Ølkollektivet. But a few other breweries such as Bad Seed, who are now in Aalborg, Black Rooster and also Ghost Brewing have brewed in this place at different points. Ghost are now brewing their beers mainly at Amager, but yeah, the Ølkollektivet was a really nice place for quite a number of the different Copenhagen-based breweries to get their beers up and running, actually. But as we said, the two guys behind this are the owners of the Fermentoren Beer Bar, which you'll find quite close to the central station in Copenhagen. But in addition to this one in Copenhagen, they also have another bar in Aarhus, and both of the Fermentoren bars have beers that are brewed exclusively for them. But today they brew around 200,000 litres of beer per year. They've basically been gradually expanding the brewery capacity since they started up, and they also host their own beer festival every year, which is called Fermentoren's Flying Circus. And as of December 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 190 different kinds of beers according to Untappd, and these days they're also producing a few different sour beers as well. But as I mentioned to you earlier, this brewery is mainly known for their different kinds of IPA. We've had West Coast IPAs from them, New England's, double IPAs as well. I think we've had some pale ales too, and of course they do a couple of black IPAs every so often as well. But yeah, definitely a very, very good brewery, these guys. And I think probably the best beer that I've had from them was their Hive, the 5th anniversary triple IPA. That was absolutely beautiful, actually, and potentially one of the best Danish IPAs that I've ever had, come to think of it. And they rebrew that beer every so often, in fact, so that is one that's definitely worth checking out. Double Dippy Doo and Triple Dippy 2 are also very nice ones. And yeah, I think the Hobo Chick, if I remember rightly, back in the day, the West Coast IPA was also very, very nice. So make sure you check out that one if you get the chance. But yeah, very, very solid brewery, these guys, and definitely nice to try another black IPA from them for sure. But that's all I can really tell you about Dry and Bitter Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that is it for your brewery history section. Let's get on and have a taste of this beer itself. So just move my laptop away now that we've finished with the brewery notes. But yeah, just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. So as you can see, there is Undergang, very death metal kind of letters there. Sort Jul, which was basically, I don't know if that's Black Christmas or just Dark Christmas, because of course in Swedish we would say Svart. But yeah, there you can see Santa looks a little bit like Voldemort, and he's kind of growing out of the, I don't know if that's meant to be like a kind of bunch of cells or whatever, or some, like a bit of a, twisted wood or something like this, but still pretty cool artwork, like a kind of zombie Santa sort of thing. But there you can see on the back, there is the Dry and Bitter Brewing Company symbol. Sort Jul, it tells you a little bit on the back here. Sort Jul is a collaboration with Denmark's most rotten purveyors of death metal, Undergang. Dark chocolate flavours from the massive black malts are balanced by citrus notes from a dry hop of Citra, Mosaic and Columbus. And it says a little bit in Danish, De siger der hjertenes tid, jeg ser sneen fader ved, alt jeg ønsker den død. Og jeg glæder mig til jul. So something, all I want to see is your death, and it makes me happy for Christmas. I think that's what it means. My Danish, of course, I can speak Swedish quite well, but Danish, so it just takes you a little bit longer to process it, to be honest with you. But yeah, as we said earlier, this one is a black double IPA coming in at 7.5%. This is probably at the very bottom of what you can term a double IPA, to be honest with you, at least in my opinion. But yeah, so it should be quite nice. Plain silver cap on the can here. I believe this beer cost me 55 Danish kroner, which translates to roughly, that's going to be about 70 Swedish, so that's about €7, somewhere in the region of like £6 sterling in that case, and maybe in the region of $8 American. So yeah, as I always say, you pay a little bit more when it comes to beer in Scandinavia and the Nordic countries, but labour costs, strong currencies and things like that, it's just economics. But wages here are pretty good, so it doesn't make much of a difference. But yeah, nicely presented beer, this one, 7.5% black IPA. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So a little bit of carbonation going crazy as we open it up, but let me just be careful with it. And there we go. So yeah, a little tiny bit came through the hole in the can, but it is okay now. So let's get this guy poured and we'll get on with the tasting. So yeah, black IPAs, I find these to be a really interesting style. Back in the day, I only really liked these beers when they were imperial, but the more that I've the more examples that I've drank and the more I've kind of gotten used to them, the more I would say I've started to enjoy the lower ABV examples of the style. But yeah, I always liked it. One of my favourite black IPAs, probably still my favourite black IPA, would be Black Salts and Body Malts from Toil, and that one was a big like 9%er or something. And yeah, it's just a beautiful, beautiful beer, that. So if you get the chance to try that one, I highly recommend you do. But that one was my kind of benchmark, if you like, for the style. I can't remember, maybe the Libertine Black Ale from Brewdog would be the very first black IPA that I ever tried, but I couldn't tell you for sure. But the black IPA, it disappeared for quite a wee while, but then it's only in the last, during the last year or two, that this style has started to kind of re-emerge. But it's a really nice one, and I'm glad that more people are starting to kind of pay attention to it a little bit again. But anyway, we've got this beer out and into the glass now. As you can see, it's poured with about just under a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of light fawn sort of head there. It looks very, very nice. But yeah, there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head. If we shine the light through this beer, I think it's fair to say that this one is pretty opaque. There's not a lot in the way of transparency with it, but colour-wise, I think it's absolutely fair to say that this one is a nice dark ebony rosewood colour. And to be honest, you're not going to expect anything less of a black IPA. You would expect this sort of nice big dark colour from them. But yeah, I do like how this one goes together in that sense. So yeah, one or two tiny little bits of sediment at the bottom of the glass. And maybe I had the fridge set a little bit too cold for it, but what can you do? But nice looking beer, to be honest with you. Nothing really surprising about it in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is. So I think it's about time that we had a look at the aroma for this one. So yeah, let's look at it. Just remember, the colour of your beer depends on the different kinds of malt that you use. A black IPA is going to use some sort of black malt, maybe some chocolate malt or carafa or something like this. So that's going to go a long way to determining your EBC rating, and that's why you get these lovely big dark colours. Again, if you shine the light through this, you maybe get a little hint of a kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it. But lovely looking beer. Let's take a look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. This should be nice. Oh yeah, that is pretty nice. Did they say it was Citra and Mosaic? Yeah, Citra, Mosaic, and a bit of Columbus in this one. So yeah, it makes sense, because this beer, the first thing you notice about it's got a nice little bit of an orangey character to it for sure. But yeah, I would say this one is really nicely balanced. It's got a little bit of breadiness, a little bit of sweetness to it, nice oily fruits, and the green component is, quite smooth, but still shows you a little bit of that floral aromaticity that you want from it. It's a really nicely balanced aroma that you get out of this. But let's just break it down a little bit and describe it a wee bit more for you. So backbone of this beer, absolutely, it's a nice kind of toasty, not too well fired bread crusty character that you get out of it, but yeah, a nice kind of toasty bread crusty notes in it. There's quite a nice little bit of a kind of brown rye bready character in this one. So yeah, a little bit of a kind of sweet brown rye bready character for me. There's just something in my head is saying there will be a little bit of straight up black malt in here, but there's something that's telling me there's a bit of carafa, and it's the way that the bread crusty notes come out of this one. Carafa, of course, is a trademark malt of the Weirmann maltery in Bamberg in Franconia, northern Bavaria, down in Germany. But it's just got such a distinctive note to it. The bread crusty notes out of this really make me think carafa, so I would be very, very curious to see what the malt bill of this beer actually is. But yeah, toasty bread crust, a bit of a sweet brown bready character in there, but on top of that, I actually get quite a little bit of a kind of quite highly caramelised brown sugar, so a little bit of a treacly molasses sort of thing, but there is a wee bit of a kind of straight up sweet caramel coming out of this one as well. So yeah, a bit of treacle and molasses, a bit of sweet caramel, and in fairness, you do actually get a little bit of chocolate out of this beer. But I'd say it's leaning towards the darker end of the spectrum, and it's very mixed in with the different kind of bready sort of things. So yeah, nice little bit of a chocolate malty character in there, somewhere in the region of like a 60, maybe 70% cocoa chocolate. But yeah, I think this beer really leans more towards that kind of bready side of the spectrum. But the presence of the brown sugars and the sort of toastiness of the brown sugar, that's what really tells you it's more of a sort of West Coast black IPA. I mean, these styles aren't really defined on Untappd or anything. This is just my own experience I'm talking about here. But quite often, the new black IPAs that you'll find are more bready and oaty and things like this, but the brown sugary presence that this one has, I think would define it as a more old school kind of West Coasty type black IPA. But I think this one, it almost comes across as if it's got a little bit of rye bread in it, but I think it would just smell a wee bit just grainier in a sense. And this one, it's quite a smooth and slightly sweet brown bread that you get out of this. But the malt base is really nice. You could probably say that there are one or two little woody undertones to it, but otherwise it's just a really nice beer, this one. So it gets a thumbs up from me, actually. Yeah. But the more that I smell of this, the kind of sweeter the brown sugary elements of this beer become, actually. So yeah, I like how this one goes together for sure on the malty side of things. But yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of this beer. We never really talked about the hops in this one earlier. So the three hops, Columbus, Citra, Mosaic, we know all of these quite well. All three of them are American. Columbus, about 12% alpha acid, known for its big spicy floral aromatic component, a very good bittering hop incidentally. Mosaic, we know 14% alpha acid, big tangerine juicy notes. Citra, 14% alpha acid, once again, big mango and a nice kind of citrusy, lemon limey, zesty character. So yeah, all of these hops we do know quite well. But I would say with this beer and the aroma, it's the Mosaic and the orangey characters on the fruity side of things that really jump out at me. But on the green component, there's a little bit of earthiness in there. You can smell that nice deep floral aromaticity. And I found this with Columbus in black IPAs. It really does come across as a little bit more, it does give you a little bit of a more kind of piney resinous character, and it just goes to show you that different hops behave differently depending on what malts and yeasts and stuff you mix them with. So to me, if I was smelling this blind, I would think there was a bit of a Chinook in this because of the kind of piney resinous character it has. Because for me, Columbus was always the more kind of spicy floral aromatic bittering hop, whereas Chinook was that more piney resinous and grapefruity type one. So yeah, if I was smelling this blind, I would think a bit of Chinook, absolutely. But yeah, for me, nice, deep, slightly dank, piney resinous characters coming out of this one, but definitely a bit of that spicy floral aromaticity on top, and then you've got a nice, fresh, zesty, grassy character coming out of it as well. So yeah, I really like how that goes together in this particular beer, so it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. The green component is quite nice, but like I said, you've got some nice big oily fruity characters in there. I do get a wee touch of a grapefruity note, which I'm assuming is from the Citra for sure, but I'm trying to see if I get any of the mango. There's maybe a little bit of a juicy mango-y note in there from the Citra, but I do get quite a little bit of a kind of red fruity character too, maybe a wee touch of fig or something like that. But then yeah, a lot of tangerine orangey notes coming out of this one. Simcoe was always quite a popular hop to put in these black IPAs back in the day, but yeah, these days it is more just a kind of mix of Citra and Mosaic and you know, everything. There's quite a few more new hops out these days that we can try in black IPAs, but for me, Cascade and Chinook and a bit of Columbus, these always made really classic black IPAs. But lovely aroma, this one, and definitely leaning toward that more kind of West Coasty black IPA thing that I've talked about. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of these beers before you get stuck into them. But I think it's about time that we had a taste of this one and see how we go. So yeah, this one is the Undergang Sortjul 7.5% Black IPA, or Black Double IPA as they're calling it, from Dry and Bitter Brewing Company in Gorløse in Copenhagen. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Ooh. That's really nice, actually. This is one of these beers that, again, it comes across as it's got a really nice balance to it. And you guys will know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I quite like being Scottish. You know, I always talk about the Scottish sweet tooth. But I pay quite a lot of attention to the malt base in beers. And a lot of people focus on the hops, but I think the malt base is also critical as well. But this one, the way the malt base and the hops just balance out in this, I think is really nice. And it's interesting. My first impression of this beer is that it's kind of nice and oily in the beginning, but it really gets more dry and bitter the further that you go. into the aftertaste. So I really like how this beer goes about its business. So it gets a thumbs up from me once again, actually. So yeah, not surprised though. Dry and Bitter do have a reputation for a reason, and they've produced another solid beer here. So yeah. So on the malt base, then let's kick off with this. So middle third of your palate and back third of your palate. These two base layers are probably applicable to both. But yeah, you can feel that nice toasty, well-fired bread crusty quality just forming the backbone of the beer here. And again, I think that works out really, really nicely. So yeah, nice like roasty, toasty, um, well-fired bread crusty sort of thing there. On top of that, you can feel the slightly thicker brown bready note for sure. And yeah, I think the further you go into the aftertaste with that, the sort of sweetness of the kind of brown rye bready sort of thing just goes back a little bit. But then you get that toasty, well-fired kind of quality out of the beer too, and that just takes over a little bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. But if we focus on that middle third of your palate, so you've got middle third there, roasty, toasty, backbone, brown bread on top, then you've just got a little bit of you've got a little bit of that kind of woody element to it as well. You can feel toward the front of that middle third of your palate there is a little touch of a woody kind of thing there. So yeah. So the way that that goes together is really quite nice, and it's a solid backbone for these beers. But it's interesting because on top of the brown bread you do get a little bit of sweetness, and as I said to you, when you first take this beer in, you'll feel that it's slightly sweeter, and it's quite an oily and sweet beer in the beginning. But if you focus on that middle part of your palate, on top of the bready layer you've got like a kind of circle in there, so you get that kind of roasty, toasty, brown sugary element out of the beer. So you can feel that nice roasty, toasty, brown sugary backbone. But if you go into the dead centre of your palate, you'll feel a more oily circle coming out of this one. So you get that nice oily circle, and that's where you get the sort of caramelly brown sugars out of this one. And it's compared to the aroma, I thought there was a good little bit of treacle and molasses in this one, but it's actually more of a kind of you get a little bit of that treacle molasses, but in the dead centre of your palate, it's actually more of a sweet caramel. So the brown sugars actually have a little bit of they do actually have a nice little bit of a kind of layering to them. So roasty, toasty brown sugar underneath, the treacle molasses on top, and then a little bit of a small sweet caramelly character right in the middle of things. So yeah, I do like how this goes together. But yeah, I think I'm just thinking, I'm trying to figure out whether I get a bit of chocolate out of this. I think in fairness, toward the back of that middle third of the palate, there is a bit of that kind of high percentage cocoa chocolate there, an 80-90% cocoa chocolate that just sits on top of the bread. And if you go towards the kind of front of the that middle third of your palate as well, you still get that. And usually it's interesting because usually when you have chocolate in a beer, it feels like more high percentage cocoa and dark chocolatey toward the back, but as you move further forward, it gets a little bit more milky in its chocolatey nature, if you can call it that. So yeah, there's a few wee things like that going on, but this one, the chocolatey notes are actually very, very dark in this. And as I say, the further you go into the aftertaste for this beer, it's that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust that comes out with this one. So yeah, the middle third of your palate in this beer I think is really nice, and again it gets a thumbs up from me. Let's focus on the back third of the palate then. So back third of your palate, you can feel that nice roasty, toasty, bread crusty backbone there. That forms the backbone of it. On top of that, you get the kind of, you can feel the bread crust. The bread crust kind of is a little bit thicker, but on top of that, you get the kind of nice sweet brown bread. And I would say the brown bread is actually a little bit more kind of writhing and grainy in there. But as I said, there's no rye malt in this one. I would think there was if I was tasting it blind. But yeah, you can feel that nice kind of rye, brown bready layer, and then on top of that, you can feel the yeasty side of the beer. So the yeasty side of the beer feels like a more kind of condensed, it feels like a more kind of condensed brown bready sort of thing. So yeah, and you've got a little bit of that kind of almost peppery, spicy character to it as well. But yeah, I like how this beer goes about its business in that sense. So yeah. So on that, I mean, the back third of your palate is actually quite simple. It's similar flavors, but you can just feel that that flavor is a little bit taller. So on the back third of your palate, you can feel flavor is definitely a little bit taller, and as you come further forward, it just condenses down a little bit, and the flavors just kind of squash together a wee bit, and the flavors just feel that little bit more condensed. But I think that's everything we really need to say about the malty and yeasty side of this beer. It's quite nice, and as I say, this one leans towards the more kind of roasty, toasty, and slightly bready end of the black IPA, the West Coast black IPA spectrum. But there is a good degree of sweetness to this one in the beginning. But this beer gets a thumbs up from me in that sense. But let's focus on the hoppy side of things then, and I think Columbus is really showing its head quite nicely in this beer. So they talk about the dry hopping with this, but I'd be very curious to know how much early edition hop they did with this particular beer, because remember, early edition hops are the ones that give you the main bitterness of the beer. The late edition hops within the last half hour of the wort boil, usually those are the ones that give you a little bit of bitterness but mainly flavour and aroma. Then dry hopping is completely flavour and aroma. So there's quite a few things to consider there. But I do wonder if this beer has had a little bit of quite a bit of early edition hop in it, because the Columbus really comes out quite nicely in this. So yeah, if we start at the back corner of the palate, you do get a little bit of earthiness there, which again I think is Columbus, but as you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a kind of herbally note, and as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more sort of, you get a nice big floral aromaticity out of this one. So I really like how that goes together in this beer for sure. It gets a big thumbs up from me. This green component is quite nice, and it is a little bit more old school actually. One thing I do miss about the West Coast IPAs is the big bitterness that you get, and the black IPA is a beer that can still offer that, just in a different way. But you do get that nice spicy floral aromaticity from the Columbus towards the front corners of your palate, but round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and grassy, and there's a wee bit more kind of zestiness to it. But yeah, I do like how this beer goes together in that sense. So yeah, the fruity side of this one as well is quite nice, but green component I do enjoy. But let's focus on that front third of your palate and the fruity side of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you've got a nice little bit of you do have a nice little bit of brown bread in this one, so you get a little bit of that kind of bready build up there, and then the base of the front third of your palate, there's a bit of that kind of smooth, just brown bready character there, and I think it's more of a kind of rye bread, and like I say, this beer just gets grainier and grainier the further that you go into it. But sitting on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. But let's focus on that for just now. So, the fruity esters in this one are actually really quite nice. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you get a bit of that grapefruit, that pungent grapefruit, and that's going to be the citra that gives you that. But you actually, from when you move forward from that, you get this kind of more red fruity character. It's almost a little bit like a kind of figgy, slightly blackberry sort of thing. But then as you reach the kind of middle of that front third of your palate, you're getting a little bit of the kind of typical mango things that you expect of citra. So yeah, a bit of grapefruit, which citra treat, then you get this little bit of a kind of blackberry sort of thing, black curranty maybe, and then mango toward the middle. That front third of your palate, then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you get a nice tangerine orangey note out of the beer. So I do really like how that goes together in this one. So yeah, nice big tangerine orangey characters from the mosaic, and that works quite nicely. There's maybe a wee hint of I get a little bit of lime just behind the very front tip of the tongue, but maybe that's maybe that's not quite right, but yeah, you know, Citra will give you a wee bit of a kind of lemon limey, pardon me, sort of thing. So I do wonder if Columbus is contributing a little bit to the red fruit in this. But Columbus is not known for being such a fruity hop, of course. But yeah, whatever it is, the fruity side of this beer works quite nice. It's got a lovely little bit of slickness to it, so it's a thumbs up from me. I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this beer, actually. But on the, as I say, I think on the mouthfeel side of things, just to round off the review then, what can we say about that? I think this beer is pushing towards the top end of mid-bodied. Yeah, so definitely mid-bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth in this one. There is a wee bit of crispness there, but I think that helps the kind of darker side of the beer. But the overall, it's actually quite a slick and slightly oily beer, this one, which I think suits it, to be honest with you. In terms of IBUs, I don't know what to rate this one, because, you know, the black malt or the carafe or whatever it is that's in this one, that's playing quite a role. But Columbus is giving you a big bit of bitterness. I wouldn't be surprised if this beer, it feels like it's, you know, 70, 80 IBUs, something like that, but IBUs are my weakest point of beer review, and hands up, this is something that I quite often get wrong, so I'm not sure about the IBU in this, but it feels to me like a 60, 70 IBU beer. The malt base, as we said, toastiness in there, smoothness, and a good little bit of sweetness, and there's a lovely oily, fruity character to this beer as well. So I mean, overall, I really like how this one, I really like how this beer goes about its business, and it works. You know, for me, this is a really nicely done black IPA. A little bit old school, as I say, and this is a style that I do enjoy. These beers are more tasters for me rather than drinkers. But yeah, the black IPA is a very nice style. But I have to say, I think Dry and Bitter have done a really nice job of this again, and it actually makes me a little bit nostalgic for some of the old beers. I always found that the early beers from Dry and Bitter had this lovely oily, slick, fruity character to them, and this one shows that off very, very nicely. So yeah, big thumbs up for this one. So yeah, let's leave it at that. So this beer was the Undergang Sort Yule, a collaboration beer between the Danish death metal band Undergang and Dry and Bitter Brewing Company from Gurlos in Copenhagen. I've really enjoyed this. So thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dry and Bitter Brewing, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the near future. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Make sure you check out this beer. Check out Jessica's shop, Beer Hive in Amager in Copenhagen, and I'll see you guys again soon, and listen to lots of heavy metal. Ciao just now.